One of the most grand and beautiful structures in Monterey sits on the Naval Postgraduate School campus. Now called Herman Hall, this building was once the world-famous Hotel Del Monte. It established a reputation as the most elegant seaside resort in the world, and was visited by 4 presidents and countless celebrities, artists, and world leaders.
Monterey in the late 19th century was an extremely small, very laid-back village. Population had been decimated because of the California gold rush. Men had left the town to hit the fields and try and find their fortune, and very few of them actually returned. So the Monterey of the 1870s, just prior to the construction of Hotel Del Monte, was relatively quiet and relatively simple.
The original Hotel Del Monte was built by railroad pioneer Charles Crocker in 1880. It was an instant success, even though it was located in the isolated Monterey Bay.
In the 1870s, tourism was truly non-existent in the town of Monterey. Things changed dramatically when Charles Crocker built Hotel Del Monte. Initially, critics said that people would not travel the long distances required to get to Monterey. What Crocker did was he bought the narrow gauge rail line, Monterey Salinas Railway. He bought that. Then he built a standard gauge line that connected Monterey directly to San Francisco. That line you see is today's recreation trail. The travelers could take the Del Monte Express. Once they were in San Francisco, they could arrive in Monterey in 3.5 hours. It greatly simplified the travel time. The great success that Crocker had was that he brought guests from around the world to Monterey. And this required extensive travel for those coming from abroad, a hop across the pond, and then nearly a 2-week one-way trip on the Transcontinental Railroad to get to San Francisco, and then the final jump from San Francisco to Monterey. But travelers came, and when Hotel Del Monte opened in June 1880, it was booked solid. The hotel was such an immediate success that it had to turn down about 3,000 reservation requests in the first week alone. I think there are probably several elements that created the appeal. One was the literary work of Mark Twain and Bret Harte. They had cast this great romantic view of the American West, which was still very much a frontier. And their works were highly readable, highly entertaining, and very exciting. The other is that, of course, while California was a state, in between the Mississippi River and the state of California were the Western territories. Here you had the Badlands, you had Indian tribes that still rampaged, and these made sensational headlines. So when Hotel Del Monte opened in 1880, one could take this romantic trip through the wild and rugged American West, and they could wind up at the world's most elegant seaside resort, where they had some of the greatest resources available to anyone in the world, whether it was fishing, hunting, sailing, touring the great 17-mile drive, which offered exotic scenes and historic places. So it was a unique package that Charles Crocker put together for the early hotel.
The original wooden Gothic structure was destroyed in a fire in 1887. It was rebuilt, but by 1915, the resort had fallen on hard times. An innovator named Samuel F.B. Morse was hired to liquidate the hotel and other railroad properties. Instead, he went about reinvigorating the property, creating what he called a sports empire. The resort now included golf courses, an auto and horse racetrack, polo fields, tennis courts, swimming, yachting, and deep-sea fishing.
The opening of Hotel Del Monte created a recreation and tourism industry that far exceeded even what Charles Crocker had anticipated. This was a sweeping, commanding hotel building set within a beautiful forest and botanical garden and adjacent to Monterey Bay, and it was, with the garden around it, just one of the most pleasant places on earth. And in fact, writers and notables really highlighted the fact that this was a unique place.
Once again, the Hotel Del Monte was the social hub for the Monterey Peninsula. It played host to several presidents, royalty, artists, celebrities, and athletes. Guests included Walt Disney, Amelia Earhart, Charles Lindbergh, Bob Hope, Ernest Hemingway, Clark Gable, Bing Crosby, Salvador Dali, and countless others. But in the early 1940s, the resort was asked to play a different role.
During World War II, our nation mobilized from a standing operating force of about 350,000 military personnel to a standing force in excess of 7 million. To get to that standing force, about 12.5 million men and women enlisted into the services. The Navy needed, as did all the services, needed additional facilities for that, to train personnel for this intensive mobilization. And the Navy requisitioned 100 hotels around the country to create new training commands. So the requisition authority allows the government to utilize private property during a national emergency. And the agreement is that the government will return that private property once the emergency is over. That was possibly the intent, although through a twist of fate during World War II, the Navy, nearly a year and a half before the war ended, began to create plans for increased growth in student population for the Naval Postgraduate School. And in order to accommodate that additional growth in the projected post-war years, they needed a separate campus for the institution. There simply was not room for it to grow on the grounds of the Naval Academy at Annapolis, where it was co-located and where it had been since its original development in 1909. So the unique twist of fate, the use of Del Monte during the war for emergency purposes, the Navy's planning nearly a full year and a half before the war was actually over for increased growth, and the definition of a requirement for a new campus. Those things combined to set the stage for the Navy's purchase of Hotel Del Monte.
In 1945, Congress passed legislation to make the Naval Postgraduate School a fully accredited, degree-granting graduate institution. They also authorized the purchase of the Hotel Del Monte and its surrounding 627 acres for use as its campus. In 1951, an ambitious project was put in place to move students, faculty, books, and supplies across the coast.
Consider this is the move of a small town in toto with their personal goods, along with equipment for the school. So some 3,000 pounds of books, for example, were among the things shipped. Well, actually, it was more than 3,000 pounds of books, but laboratory equipment, tons of material, from very delicate chemical balances to large two-story wind tunnels. These were components that had to be tagged, inventoried, crated, and shipped cross-country. Some things came by rail, others came by sea. And the families, by and large, came in moving vans and trailers.
Over the decades, the Naval Postgraduate School grew exponentially. NPS is currently home to about 1,800 students, with about 250 international students from over 60 countries. Most curricula are focused on the specific needs of the Department of Defense and the Armed Forces. The goal is to increase U.S. national security, as well as the security of allied nations, and promote strong international relations. Students study subjects ranging from public policy, operational and informational science, space systems, engineering to oceanography, and many more.
The Naval Postgraduate School is a place that provides a unique skill set for an officer, at the same time that it creates a culture and a place where officers from all U.S. services and many international countries intermingle.
From a resort to education center, the grounds of the Hotel Del Monte and the Naval Postgraduate School have been serving the world for over a century. Our first guests came for leisure and recreation. Our newest arrivals come for an education on how to improve our nation's security and make the world a better place. Even though the hotel is gone, the city of Monterey continues to be a destination for international visitors. In addition, the city is proud to be an education and research center. To think it all started with a train and a vision.